I think I saw Jason Eckhardt has a question.
Hey, Charlie, Jason, how are you?
Hey, Jason.
Hey, just a question. You mentioned parenting. So for us that, have kids and you growing up, I know some stuff I've wrote down, certainly easy never got us anywhere. So, you don't want to just handle it all for them. You don't want to let them deal with some adversity, of course. But I think resiliency is certainly a great characteristic to have. I know Scott talks a lot about it, of a big thing from a recruiting end. And as you have young kids growing up, I guess from you growing up, besides, your mom saying, hey, point your addiction in a positive way. I guess now a lot of what you're telling us, of course, are great life lessons to talk to our kids about for sure. But what was it from your end that as your parents or mentors that you had, I guess that kind of helped shape the resiliency that you have?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. No, it's a great question. It is, my parents were divorced very early. I was with my mom till I was about 13 and then moved in with my dad. So I went from this my mother was awesome. She passed away a couple of years ago. She was the most amazing person in my life. But we even joked later in life that I was lovingly neglected as a youth. I was an only child, and she was in theater, and I just kind of grew up around a bunch of adults and raising myself for the most part. And so, which is not ideal, but also taught me. It did teach me some lessons on how to sort of get along. But the one, again, I may cross the line between parenting and giving advice and all of that, but I will say what she did for me, which is this most important thing ever. My mother taught me how to think. She never taught me, sorry, I need to say it better. My mother taught me how to think, but not what to think. The most important thing my mom ever did for me, even though she couldn't have been a more liberal human being. And so once I got older, I recognized this, right? But as a kid, I would make the joke about the presidential election in 1972. This is Nixon and McGovern. And, Nixon won, I think, 49 out of 50 states. So it was a landslide and everything else. I'm the sort of long-haired kid. I'm 10 years old. I'm the long-haired, fifth grader. And in North Carolina, we got to vote in the election at school. So you go into the cafeteria and you fill out your little ballot and you vote, and you're walking out of the cafeteria. And very inappropriately, there was a teacher that was asking, so who did you vote for? And you tell them, I think I was the only child in the entire school that voted for McGovern, right? So she took those I voted stickers, she slapped it on my chest and booted me out of the cafeteria. Anyway, the point was, I asked my mother before that election, who should I vote for? And my mother said, well, that's really up to you. And some people think this, and some people believe this, and you're just going to have to make up your own mind. And it was such a powerful lesson for me. Now look, I grew up in this, very liberal household. I did ultimately gravitate towards the candidate, even at that young age, that made the most sense to me as a kid, which I think everyone does. But I do think the mistake very often is there's a difference. I've tried to do it with my own kids who are both in their 20s now, through example, they see my beliefs because I live my beliefs. So they know what I think in general, but I tried never to tell them what they should think or what they should do, because, and I'll even take it to the biggest degree. My older son, he's very open about this. He's 2.5 years clean and sober at this point. So even growing up in a sober household, he is who he is. And he was going to try drugs because most kids do. And it scares the crap out of parents. You cannot stop things from happening. You cannot prevent them. All you can do is react and respond and try to be loving and supportive, not enabling. And in addiction recovery, we learn about enabling so much because you can always rescue your kids time and time again even from, and I'm not saying don't rescue them from life-threatening situations, but you know, that rescue becomes habitual, and it can actually be more damaging than allowing, you know, your child to go through something difficult. You know, and my son barely survived his addiction, but there came a point where there was nothing I could do. He was like any other drug addict. Like, he was going to have to go through it. And until he reached a point where he was ready to be done with it, there was almost nothing I could do for him, except to continue to tell him, I love you and I am here for you, you know, when you're ready. And so another long answer I gave. I vowed I would stop giving long answers, but, you know, the main thing for me was, you know, that my mom taught me how to think. She gave me the tools for how to think for myself, but didn't implant all the things that I should think. And I think that's the greatest gift we can give our kids, is the ability to have a mind of their own.